Chapter 1. The Message That Was Meant to End Me. I was standing in my boutique when my husband texted me that our marriage was over, that he had moved in with a younger woman, and that he had already taken care of the money. What he did not know was that the account he emptied was the last place I was depending on. My name is Natalie, and this is the story of how everyone thought I would fall apart and why they were all wrong. I was arranging a silk blouse on a mannequin when my phone vibrated against the glass counter. It was the kind of afternoon that felt predictable in the best way. Soft music played through the speakers, the air smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser near the register. A longtime customer was flipping through a rack of dresses, humming to herself, unaware that anything in the world could be wrong. For a moment, I was unaware too. My name is Natalie Brooks. I am 41 years old. I own a small, high-end boutique in Sarasota, Florida. I have been married for just over 11 years to Michael Brooks, 46, a mid-level operations manager for a regional shipping company. Our marriage was not perfect, but it was steady. We paid our bills, we showed up to family holidays, we shared a life that looked solid from the outside. I managed our money. Michael never cared to. He used to joke that numbers made his head hurt and that I was better at those things anyway. I handled the checking account, the credit cards, the insurance renewals. He trusted me with it, or at least he said he did. That arrangement had never bothered me. The phone vibrated again. I glanced down, expecting a supplier confirmation or a reminder from my calendar. Instead, I saw Michael's name. The message was long, longer than any text he had ever sent me before. I read it once, then again, slower the second time. He told me he was done. He said he had moved out. He said he was starting a new life in Clearwater with someone who understood him better. Her name was Hannah Miller. She was 23. She worked in his office. He said this calmly, almost proudly, as if announcing a promotion. Near the end of the message, he added a line that made my chest tighten. He said he had already taken care of the financial side of things and that I should not worry about money. I did not respond. I looked up and smiled at my customer when she brought 2 dresses to the counter. I folded them carefully, slid them into tissue paper, and rang up the sale. My hands did not shake, my voice did not break. I even made small talk about the weather and an upcoming charity event downtown. When she left, the bell over the door chimed softly and the boutique fell quiet again. Only then did I open my banking app. The joint checking account balance stared back at me, smaller than it had been that morning, smaller than it should have been by several $1,000s, not completely empty, but close enough that the message was clear. My first physical reaction was not panic. It was cold, a sharp, spreading chill that moved from my stomach to my fingertips. It felt less like shock and more like confirmation. I sat down on the stool behind the counter and read Michael's message again, this time noticing details I had skimmed past before. The confidence in his words, the way he assumed I would fall apart, the way he spoke as if everything had already been decided, finalized, wrapped up neatly without me. I still did not respond. I thought about calling him. I thought about driving straight to our house. I thought about all the questions I could ask and all the accusations I could throw. Instead, I closed the app and locked my phone. A woman browsing near the back asked if we had a different size in a jacket. I stood up, walked over, and helped her look. We chatted about fabric and fit. I laughed at something she said. I heard myself sound normal. Inside, something else was happening. I was not replaying memories or wondering where things went wrong. I was not blaming myself or picturing him with someone younger. I had done that imagining months ago, quietly, without drama. What I felt now was focus. I remembered the way Michael used to brush off conversations about budgets, the way he had once said I worried too much, the way he assumed things would always work out because they always had. I scrolled back through our message thread and took screenshots, not out of spite, out of habit, out of instinct. I saved them to a folder on my phone, the same way I saved receipts and contracts and invoices. When I looked around the boutique, everything looked the same as it had an hour earlier. The racks were full, the lights were warm, the world had not shifted on its axis. That contrast was unsettling. I finished the rest of my shift, I closed the register, I counted the drawer, I made notes for my manager about an upcoming delivery. I did everything in the same order I always did. As I locked the front door and stepped outside into the late afternoon sun, the weight of the day finally settled in my chest, not as a wave, but as a steady pressure. Michael thought that message would break me. He thought draining our account would leave me scrambling, calling, begging him to explain himself or fix things or come back. What he did not know, what he had never bothered to learn, was that I had spent years paying attention while he coasted. I had learned to prepare quietly. I had learned not to rely on anyone else to protect my footing. I got into my car and sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. I did not cry, I did not scream, I did not send a reply. I drove home knowing that something had ended, but also knowing with a clarity that surprised me that this was not the moment I fell apart, it was the moment everything shifted.
Chapter 2. I didn't panic, I started counting. That shift did not announce itself with drama or raised voices. It crept in quietly. Over months and then years until it became part of how I moved through my life without even realizing it. When I look back now, the signs were not subtle. They only felt that way because I wanted stability more than I wanted answers. Sometime in late 2019, Michael's schedule began to change. He was still coming home most nights, still asking what was for dinner, still sitting across from me on the couch scrolling through his phone. But the rhythm was off. Meetings ran late more often. Weekend errands turned into hours away. He started guarding his time the way someone guards something fragile. I noticed the spending before anything else. Numbers have always spoken clearly to me. Charges showed up on our statements that did not fit our habits. Restaurants in parts of town he never mentioned. Bars near office buildings he claimed he rarely visited. Clothing stores that sold styles he never wore around me. The first time I asked, I kept my tone light. "Did you grab dinner out again last night?" He barely looked up from his phone. "Yeah, work thing, client stuff." The second time, he smiled like I was being silly. "You really look at every charge, don't you? That's why I let you handle the money." It was not said kindly. It was said dismissively, like a flaw I should be embarrassed about. Around the same time, the way he spoke about my boutique changed. When I first opened it, he told people he was proud of me. He bragged about how brave I was to build something on my own. That tone faded. By 2020, it had become my shop, my little store, something nice I did while he handled the real responsibilities. At a family dinner that winter, his sister Lauren asked how business was going. Before I could answer, Michael jumped in. "She keeps busy," he said. "It's more of a passion project than anything, but it makes her happy." Everyone laughed politely. I smiled and passed the salad bowl. Inside, something tightened. I did not confront him afterward. I did not argue. I watched. Patterns matter more than moments. I have learned that the hard way. People repeat themselves when they think no one is paying attention. Michael repeated himself often. He brushed off questions. He minimized concerns. He treated my awareness like an inconvenience rather than a strength. By early 2021, I felt a constant low-level unease I could not shake. Not fear, not suspicion, just the sense that something in my life rested on ground that might not be as solid as it appeared. That was when I met Olivia Nguyen for lunch. Olivia and I have known each other since our early 20s. She became a CPA, I became an entrepreneur. We both learned how fragile security can be when you assume it will always be there. We met at a small cafe near downtown Sarasota, the kind of place where people talk quietly and no one pays attention to anyone else. I told her about Michael's schedule, the spending, the way he spoke to me lately. I did not accuse him of cheating. I did not even use the word betrayal. I told her I felt exposed. She listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her mug. Then she said, very calmly, "You do not need proof of wrongdoing to protect yourself. You only need to recognize risk." I asked her what that meant in practical terms. She leaned forward slightly. "Separate accounts are not a declaration of war, Natalie. They are a safety measure, like wearing a seatbelt. You hope you never need it, but you would be foolish not to use it." The way she said it mattered. No panic, no drama, just logic. A month later, I opened a personal checking account in my own name. I did it openly, during business hours, at the same bank I had used for years. I listed my boutique income as the source. There was nothing hidden about it. I did not drain our joint account. I did not move money suddenly. I simply redirected my earnings going forward. The joint account remained healthy. Bills were paid on time, groceries, utilities, insurance. Everything looked the same from the outside. Michael never noticed. That told me more than any confession could have. Our house had always been a quiet point of tension. I inherited it from my aunt in 2011, 2 years before Michael and I married. It was mine legally and entirely. He never liked that. Every few years he brought up refinancing or adding his name, always framing it as a symbol of trust. "Why keep things separate when we're married?" he asked. I answered the same way every time. "It's simpler this way." Eventually he stopped asking. He did not stop resenting it. His family noticed my independence long before he did. His mother, Carol, called one afternoon after Michael complained about an argument we had for nothing in particular. "Marriage takes compromise," she said gently. "You cannot always do everything your own way. Men need to feel needed." I thanked her and told her I understood. I did not explain myself. Lauren was less subtle. At a holiday gathering, she commented on how much I worked, how driven I was, and suggested that maybe I should slow down before I worked myself out of a marriage. I smiled and changed the subject. At night, after Michael fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and reviewed our finances the way I always had, quietly, methodically. I organized statements, I saved records, I created folders and backups. I did not feel angry while doing it. I felt steady. There were moments when I questioned myself, moments when I wondered if I was preparing for something that would never happen. But every time I considered stopping, something small would happen that reminded me why I had started. Another unexplained charge, another late night, another dismissive comment about my work, another evening with his phone turned face down on the counter. The day I realized I no longer feared him came without fanfare. It was a Tuesday morning, sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor, as I balanced my accounts and noticed how little the joint balance mattered to me anymore. I had built a foundation quietly, legally, patiently. When people mistook my silence for weakness, it stopped bothering me. I understood the difference. Silence is not absence, it is restraint. By the time Michael finally decided to walk away, I had already learned how to stand without him. I just hadn't said it out loud yet.
Chapter 3. The first move he never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, as if my body had already accepted what my mind was still refusing to say. The house was quiet. The air conditioner clicked on and off. Somewhere outside, a lawn sprinkler hissed. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting the steady pressure in my chest settle into something more useful. I reached for my phone. There were 3 more messages from Michael, sent after I had locked up the boutique and driven home. The first was short. "I meant what I said. Don't make this harder than it has to be." The second came 20 minutes later. "I'm not trying to hurt you. This is just how it is." The third arrived close to midnight. "Stop ignoring me. I need you to confirm you saw the message." He needed confirmation because he was used to controlling the narrative. He was used to me reacting when he pushed. I set the phone down and went to the kitchen. I made coffee, I fed my dog. I moved through my morning routine with a deliberate slowness, not because I was calm, but because I refused to let panic lead. At 8:30, I sat at the table with my laptop open and my phone beside it. I logged into the bank again just to confirm what I had already seen. The joint checking balance was still low. The transactions were still there, like fingerprints. I called the bank. A recorded voice thanked me for calling. I pressed numbers, I waited. When a human finally answered, her voice was warm in that practiced way. "Thank you for calling Sun Harbor Bank. This is Melanie. How can I help you today?" I kept my voice steady. Hi, Melanie. I need to put a hold on access for my joint account and my credit card. I need to remove my husband's access immediately. There was a pause as she typed. Are you both account holders on the checking account? Yes. All right. And for the credit card, is he an authorized user or a joint holder? Authorized user. Okay, we can remove an authorized user right away. For the checking account, both holders have rights, but we can help you set up alerts and block certain types of transfers. We can also issue you a new debit card and update the online login credentials. I exhaled slowly. Do that. New card, new login, alerts on everything. I want to know the second a dollar moves. Understood, she said, her tone shifting slightly into something more serious. May I ask if there has been misuse of funds? I chose my words carefully. There has been a change in circumstances, and I need to protect myself. I am not making an accusation, I am setting boundaries. Melanie was quiet for a beat. Then she said, I can help with that. Let's start with the credit card. I'm removing him as an authorized user now. I listened to the soft tapping of her keyboard, and I felt a strange clarity settle over me. This was not revenge. This was risk management, the same thing Olivia had told me years ago, only now it was real. All right, Melanie said. He will no longer be able to use the card. You will receive a confirmation email. For the online banking, I can reset your credentials. Would you like to add two-step verification? Yes. Okay, that will be set up within the next few minutes. You will also receive a text alert for any transaction over $100. Make it 50. She hesitated, then smiled in her voice. We can do that too. When I hung up, my hands were finally trembling, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization that I had just taken the first real piece of control back. I did not text Michael. I did not warn him. I did not explain. Instead, I opened my Notes app and wrote down the time of the call, the name of the representative, and the actions taken. Then I saved it, the same way I saved invoices and vendor contacts. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. Michael, I can't get into the account. What did you do? I stared at the message until the words blurred slightly. Then I set the phone down and stood up. I walked to the sink and rinsed my coffee mug, as if I had all the time in the world. The phone buzzed again. This is not funny, Natalie. Fix it. I need access. A third message came quickly. I'm in the middle of something. I have expenses. Stop playing games. The shift in his tone was almost immediate. The confidence was gone. The assumption that he could take and I would quietly absorb it was cracking. I did not respond. At 10, I drove to the boutique. The parking lot was already filling up. The morning sun reflected off the windows. For a second, I had the strange urge to pretend everything was normal and just disappear into racks of fabric and customer conversations. But my phone buzzed again as I unlocked the door. This is not illegal. You can't do this. Then another. I'll call my lawyer. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because he still thought threats were leverage. Inside, my manager, Tessa Ward, was steaming a row of dresses for a display. She looked up the moment I walked in. You're early. Everything okay? I forced a small smile. Not really, but the store still opens at 11. Tessa studied my face the way only someone who has worked closely with you for years can. Do you want me to send the staff home? No, I said. I want things steady. I need steady. She nodded once, like she understood without needing details. Then I'll handle the floor. You take your time in the back. I went into my tiny office and closed the door. My hands hovered over my phone. I still did not text Michael. Instead, I checked the bank alerts. Nothing new yet. I checked my email. There it was, a confirmation that the authorized user had been removed, along with a security update. Then the phone rang. A number I did not recognize. I answered. Hello? A young woman's voice came through, tentative but trying to sound confident. Is this Natalie Brooks? Yes. This is Hannah Miller. For a moment, my mind went strangely quiet. Hearing her name out loud made everything sharper. I did not say anything right away. She rushed on, words tumbling together. I know this is weird. I know you probably hate me. Michael said you'd be calm about everything, but he also said you were the one who handled the money and that you would transfer it to him once you accepted this is happening. I swallowed. My grip tightened on the phone. He said that? Yes, she said quickly. We're in Clearwater. We just got to the apartment. He's trying to pay for the moving truck and his card got declined. And he keeps saying it must be you. He keeps saying you're being petty. I could picture it too easily. Michael standing with his phone in his hand, acting offended that the world was not cooperating with his plan. Hannah beside him, suddenly realizing she had followed a man who had no real foundation. I kept my voice level. Hannah, I am not transferring anything to him, and I am not discussing my finances with you. There was a fragile silence on the other end. Then she said, softer, he told me you were going to make this easy. I let that sit for a second. Michael makes a lot of promises. He always has. She inhaled, like she was trying not to cry. I didn't know about the account. I didn't know he was going to take your money. He said it was both of yours. He said you wouldn't mind because you have your store. My stomach tightened at the familiar insult, dressed up as logic. My store is my work. It isn't a backup plan for his decisions. Hannah did not respond immediately. When she spoke again, her voice sounded smaller. So what happens now? I could have said a lot. I could have tried to punish her, make her feel what I felt. Instead, I said the only honest thing. Now you find out who he really is when he doesn't get what he wants. I ended the call before she could say anything else. My phone buzzed with another message from Michael. What did you say to her? I closed my eyes for a moment. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. This was the first time he had felt the ground shift under him. He didn't know how to stand without control. Tessa knocked lightly on my office door. Grant Mercer is on the line. He wants to confirm the shipment for next week. I told him you'd call back. Tell him I'll call in 5 minutes. When she left, I stared at my phone again. The urge to respond to Michael was still there, like a muscle memory. Explain, smooth things over, make it workable. I did not. I opened my notes app and looked at my next steps, calls I needed to make, documents I needed to gather, people I needed on my side. Michael had taken money to force me into fear. It was supposed to be the lever that moved me. Instead, it became the first proof that he was willing to cross lines, and the first reminder that I was done being the one who absorbed the consequences. I put my phone face down, took a slow breath, and walked back onto the sales floor, steady enough to smile at the first customer who came through the door, even as I understood with quiet certainty that the money was only the beginning, and the real fight was just starting.
Chapter 4. When the story left his control. The next phase unfolded without noise, the way real turning points often do, quietly and with paperwork instead of shouting. I met Thomas Reed a week later in his downtown office, a space that smelled faintly of old books and coffee. He was 50, with thinning gray hair and a calm manner that made me feel like I could breathe again. I had been referred to him by Olivia, who trusted very few people with her own finances. He shook my hand and motioned for me to sit. "Tell me what happened," he said. I gave him the short version, the message, the account, the silence. I did not dramatize it. I did not editorialize. I laid out the facts the way I had learned to do over the years. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. "You did the right thing by not reacting. The strongest position is usually the quietest one." That became our strategy. Silence, documentation, let the record speak. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything. Bank statements, proof of when my house had come into my name years before the marriage, records showing my business income was separate and had been for a long time. Thomas organized it all into clean folders, each one labeled with a precision that felt grounding. Michael tried to fill the space with noise. He sent long messages accusing me of manipulation, short ones demanding access, voicemails that shifted between anger and pleading. "I just need to pay my bills," he said in one. "You're being unreasonable." I did not respond. His mother, Carol, called once. I let it go to voicemail. His sister, Lauren, sent a text telling me I was making things harder than they needed to be. I said nothing. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the county family courthouse. I arrived early, dressed simply, carrying a slim folder Thomas had prepared for me. The hallway was crowded with people waiting for their own moments of reckoning. Some were arguing in low voices. Some stared at the floor. Michael arrived 10 minutes late. He looked different, tired, less certain. He avoided my eyes as he took a seat a few rows behind me. Carol and Lauren sat beside him. When Carol noticed me, her mouth tightened. Then she looked away. Thomas leaned toward me. "Just follow my lead," he said quietly. "You don't need to explain yourself." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Howard Miller entered with little ceremony. He was 60, with a face that suggested he had seen every version of this story already. "Let's begin," he said. Michael went first. He stood, straightened his jacket, and began talking as if he were giving a presentation. He spoke about abandonment, about how blindsided he had been, about how I controlled the finances and left him with nothing. His voice grew louder as he spoke, more emotional. "I trusted her," he said. "I never thought she would do this to me." The judge listened without expression. When it was Thomas's turn, he stood slowly. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue. "Your Honor, we will let the documents speak." He handed the clerk a folder, then another. As the judge reviewed them, the room grew very still. The only sound was the rustle of paper. Thomas spoke again. "The house was acquired by my client years before the marriage. The business income has been separate and documented for several years. The joint account shows a pattern of recent withdrawals initiated by Mr. Brooks without my client's knowledge." Michael shifted in his seat. Judge Miller looked up. "Mr. Brooks, do you dispute these records?" Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. "I didn't think it mattered. We were married." The judge nodded once. "Marriage does not erase ownership, nor does it justify unilateral financial decisions." Carol stared straight ahead. Lauren's hands were clenched in her lap. Michael tried again. "She knew I needed the money. She locked me out to punish me." I felt Thomas's calm beside me like an anchor. Judge Miller's voice was even. "What I see here is preparation on one side and assumption on the other." He looked at me for the first time. "Ms. Brooks, do you wish to add anything?" I stood, my legs steady despite the weight in my chest. "No, Your Honor." That was all. The judge nodded, satisfied. He issued his ruling without drama. Temporary orders, clear boundaries, protection of separate assets, instructions that left no room for interpretation. Michael's face drained of color. For the first time since this had begun, he looked at me directly. There was no anger there, no confidence, only confusion. Carol did not look at me at all. Lauren stared at the floor. When it was over, people began to stand and move toward the exits. Conversations resumed in whispers. Thomas gathered his papers and gave me a small nod. "You did well. This part is done." Outside, the air felt lighter. Not joyful, just easier to breathe. Michael approached me near the steps. "Was this really necessary?" His voice was low now, careful. I met his eyes. "You decided that when you sent the message." He had no reply. Carol and Lauren lingered behind him. Carol opened her mouth as if to speak, then thought it better of it. Lauren looked away. I walked to my car alone. As I drove home, the adrenaline faded, leaving something quieter in its place. Relief, yes, but also a strange emptiness. I had imagined this moment so many times without realizing it. the point where the story shifted from accusation to outcome. I had expected triumph, satisfaction, closure. What I felt instead was space. Space to think, space to breathe, space where fear used to live. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat for a moment with the engine off. The house stood exactly as it always had, solid, unchanged. I realized then that I had not won anything. I had simply stopped losing ground, and that was enough for now.
Chapter 5: The Life He Never Planned for Me. In the weeks that followed, nothing exploded. Nothing crashed in a single spectacular moment. Life simply kept moving, and Michael's world narrowed a little more each time it did. At first, he kept trying to act like the hearing was just a bump in the road. He sent messages that sounded polite, almost professional, asking if we could talk like adults. When I did not respond, the tone shifted again. Then it shifted back. I watched it all from a distance, the way you watch weather you no longer stand in. Thomas handled what needed handling. Papers were filed, dates were set, decisions were made in rooms where feelings did not matter. I showed up when I had to. I stayed quiet. I left with my spine straight and my hands steady. Michael did not have the same steadiness. He started missing deadlines. He forgot documents. He arrived late to meetings. He blamed everyone but himself, and that blame did not land the way it used to. I heard pieces of it through the people who still cared enough to mention his name. Sarasota is not a small town, but it can feel like one when lives overlap. Olivia called me one evening while I was closing the boutique. "He's trying to get a personal loan," she said. "One of my colleagues recognized his name from the paperwork. It's not going well." I leaned against the counter, listening to the quiet hum of the lights above me. "I don't want to know details," I said. "I know," she replied gently. "I'm not telling you to stir anything up. I'm telling you because you should be aware he's scrambling." Scrambling was the right word. Michael was a man who had always assumed things would work out because he had always been able to talk his way through the uncomfortable parts. Now the uncomfortable parts were facts on paper. His mother Carol stopped calling after a while. When she did call, her voice had lost its firmness. "This is all so messy," she said one afternoon, like the mess had simply appeared out of nowhere. "It didn't start with me," I replied, and that was the closest I came to an argument. Lauren avoided me entirely. She unfollowed my boutique account. Then she followed it again weeks later, as if she could not decide whether to be angry or curious. Michael lost people the way a tree loses leaves, not all at once, but gradually. Coworkers stopped inviting him out. Friends stopped returning calls. The woman who had once been a convenient escape became less of a prize when he stopped looking like a winner. I did not hear it directly from him. I heard it from quiet places. Tessa told me one morning that a customer had mentioned seeing Michael at a bar in Clearwater, alone, looking irritated. The customer had not recognized him at first, only later after someone else pointed him out. "It's not my business," Tessa said, watching my face carefully. "It isn't," I answered. "Let's keep it that way." Even so, I understood what that meant. He was not building a new life. He was pacing inside the consequences of the one he had destroyed. As for Hannah, the young woman from the phone call, she disappeared from the story without drama. No confrontation, no public scenes, no messages to me, just absence. One afternoon, about 2 months after the hearing, I saw her name pop up on my phone. I let it ring twice before answering. I do not know why I picked up, maybe because I wanted the chapter fully closed. She sounded cautious. "Hannah, it's Natalie. I know you probably don't want to talk to me." "Then why are you calling?" I asked, not harshly, just plainly. There was a pause. "I left," she said. "I'm not with him anymore.
I just wanted to say I'm sorry for being part of it. I didn't understand what he was doing. He kept saying it was clean. He kept saying you were fine. I stared at the wall of my office, where a small framed photo of my boutique opening day hung above my desk. My younger self smiled in that photo. I barely recognized her now. I believe you didn't understand, I said. She exhaled shakily. He kept saying you were trying to ruin him. He kept saying you were cold and calculating. I almost smiled at that. Cold and calculating had once been an insult. Now it felt like evidence I had survived. I wasn't trying to ruin him. I was trying to protect myself. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I considered the question and realized I did not have the energy for hate anymore. Hate is still attachment. It still keeps you tied to someone else's choices. No, I don't know you well enough to hate you. I hope you learn to ask better questions next time. She was quiet, then whispered, "I will." When I hung up, I felt nothing dramatic, just a small release, like setting down a heavy bag you didn't realize you were still carrying. The boutique became my anchor in a different way than it had been before, not as something I had to prove, but as something that proved itself. Business did not explode overnight. It did not turn into a fairy tale. It stayed steady, and that steadiness meant more to me than a sudden surge ever could. Sophia kept the staff calm, Tessa kept the floor moving, Mark Ellison stayed reliable, the kind of partner who doesn't flinch when your personal life gets complicated. I showed up every day, I handled what needed handling, I took breaks when I needed them, not when someone else gave me permission. There were evenings when I came home and the silence felt sharp. The house was mine, legally and emotionally, but it still held echoes. I would stand in the hallway and feel a flicker of grief for the life I thought I had. Not for Michael, not really, but for the version of myself who had believed she had to earn love by being agreeable. That grief softened over time. One day, I realized I had gone an entire week without checking my phone for messages from him. I had stopped bracing for the next demand, the next accusation, the next attempt to pull me back into his chaos. Freedom did not arrive as a celebration. It arrived as quiet space in my mind where fear used to sit. I did not win because Michael lost. I won because I stopped handing my future to someone who treated it like an accessory. And if you are listening to this and you have ever been told you're too independent, too quiet, too focused on your own life, I want to ask you something. When was the last time someone called you cold when what you were really doing was protecting yourself? If you have a story like that, or if you have ever watched someone underestimate you and felt your strength building in the silence, leave a comment and tell me what happened. I read more of them than you might think. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not to shout, not to beg, not to explain. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to keep building, quietly, until the day someone tries to pull the ground out from under you and finds out it's already solid.